Hello friends, welcome to Tales Haven. I hope you find my story videos interesting and engaging. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. Claire Matthews pressed her forehead against the car window as the trees passed in a blur of green. The road curved gently, like it was leading her somewhere quiet, somewhere forgotten. That was exactly what she needed. She had just ended a long, painful relationship. For years wasted, she thought. She had given her heart, her time, and all her plans for the future to someone who didn't treat her the way she deserved. When it ended, she packed what she could into her small car and left Los Angeles without saying goodbye to anyone. She didn't know where she was going, only that she wanted to be far from the noise and the memories. After 2 days of driving, she found herself in a small town called Rosewood. It was peaceful, the kind of place where birds chirped louder than cars and everyone waved to strangers. The sidewalks were cracked but clean, and the coffee shops smelled like cinnamon and old books. Claire liked it instantly. As she drove through the neighborhoods, she spotted it. A large, gray house sitting alone on Chestnut Hill Road. A crooked wooden fence surrounded the property, and wild roses grew along the edges. The house looked old but not broken, like it had a long story to tell. A small sign on the gate read, "For rent. Inquire within." Claire stopped the car. She stared at the house for a long moment. Something about it pulled at her. It wasn't just beautiful. It felt familiar, like a picture from a dream. She walked up to the porch. The wooden steps creaked under her weight, and the screen door let out a high-pitched squeal when she opened it. Inside, the house smelled like dust and time, but there was a warmth to it, a strange comfort, like someone had just left the room and would return any second. "Hello," she called out. A moment later, an old man appeared from the back hallway. He wore faded jeans, a flannel shirt, and a slight limp in his left leg. His face was wrinkled but kind, and his gray eyes studied her with quiet interest. "You hear about the house?" he asked. "Yes," Claire said. "Is it really for rent?" He nodded. "Hasn't been lived in for a while. Most people don't stay long. But you're welcome to look around." She walked through the rooms slowly. The house had wooden floors, tall windows that let in soft sunlight, and rooms with old furniture covered in white sheets. There was a fireplace in the living room, a big kitchen with deep cabinets, and upstairs, 3 bedrooms and a narrow hallway with wallpaper that had faded flowers. "It's lovely," she said. "But why is the rent so low?" The old man shrugged. "Some folks say it's haunted. I say it just remembers too much." Claire raised an eyebrow. "You mean like ghosts?" He gave a crooked smile. "Maybe. Or maybe it just holds on to the past. Either way, if you treat the house kindly, it'll treat you the same." Most people would have turned and walked away. But not Claire. Something about the house felt safe, like it wanted her to stay. It was quiet, yes, but not empty. And after everything she'd been through, the quiet felt like healing. "I'll take it," she said, surprising herself with how quickly the words came. The old man nodded. "All right. You can call me Mr. Jenkins. I'll bring the paperwork tomorrow. You can move in whenever you're ready." That night, Claire brought her suitcase inside and curled up on the old couch. She didn't even unpack. She just listened to the soft wind outside and let the calmness of the house settle around her. She smiled for the first time in weeks. "I'm going to be okay," she whispered. But what Claire didn't know was that the house had been waiting for her and for something far beyond her understanding. Because that night, as she drifted off to sleep, a presence she couldn't see stepped into the room and watched her with eyes full of longing. Claire slept deeply her first night in the house, wrapped in quiet. But just before sunrise, something stirred her from sleep. She didn't wake fully, only drifted halfway between a dream and the real world. It felt like someone was there. She didn't hear footsteps or voices. Instead, it was a feeling, a gentle warmth near the foot of her bed. Not scary, just present. Like someone was standing close, watching with care. In her dream, she saw a man. He stood at the edge of the bed, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His face was calm. His eyes, deep and soft, seemed to glow slightly in the moonlight that spilled through the window. He looked young, maybe late 20s, but there was something timeless about him.
He didn't speak.
He didn't move. He simply stood there and looked at her with a kind of quiet sadness. Claire didn't feel afraid. In fact, she felt strangely safe. She blinked in the dream and whispered, "Who are you?" But before she could hear an answer, the wind picked up outside. It howled softly through the cracks in the old walls, and just like that, the dream faded. She opened her eyes. The room was empty. Pale blue morning light shone through the curtains. Her chest rose and fell with steady breaths, and her skin was cool with a light sweat. She sat up slowly, brushing her fingers through her messy brown hair. "That felt so real," she murmured. It was probably just her mind reacting to the new place, she told herself. A strange house, unfamiliar sounds. Of course her brain would fill in the blanks. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of those eyes watching her with calm and care. She got out of bed and padded into the kitchen barefoot. The floor creaked beneath her, just as it had the day before. She made a cup of tea and stared out the window at the backyard, where an old swing hung from a dying tree. "I really need to get out of my head," she whispered. Later that day, Claire unpacked some of her things: books, clothes, her favorite tea mug, and a framed photo of her parents. She placed it on the nightstand. As she set it down, her eyes glanced at the bed again. Last night came back to her. The man, the way he stood there so still. His eyes had looked straight into her heart. That night, she went to bed earlier, hoping for a peaceful sleep. But again he came. This time in the dream, he was closer. He sat at the edge of the bed, his hands folded in his lap. Claire could see the shape of his shoulders, the curve of his jaw, even the fine lines near his eyes that were now full of quiet thoughts. She sat up in the dream, completely aware of him. "Why do I keep seeing you?" she asked. He looked at her for a long time, then opened his mouth to speak. But before any words could leave his lips, something always cut in. The wind. The distant sound of the house shifting. A creak. A whisper. She could never hear him. And then she would wake. This happened night after night. Each time he came a little closer. Each time, the feeling grew stronger. This connection that made her heart beat faster, her skin feel warmer. It wasn't just a dream anymore. It was like a meeting. A shared space between the living and something else. During the day, Claire tried to focus on normal things. She went into town, bought groceries, and visited the coffee shop where the owner, a cheerful woman named Brenda, gave her a free slice of pie with her drink. "You're new here, huh?" Brenda asked. "Yeah," Claire replied. "Just moved into the house on Chestnut Hill." Brenda's smile faltered for a second. "Oh, that place. It's a beauty." Claire narrowed her eyes. "You sound unsure." Brenda shrugged. "It's just old. Some folks think it's got history." Claire smiled politely and didn't press further. She didn't want to hear ghost stories. Not yet. Not when she wasn't sure if she was imagining everything. That night, when she came home, she found something odd. The record player in the corner of the living room, a piece that had come with the house, was on. A vinyl spun slowly, and a soft jazz tune filled the room. Claire didn't remember turning it on. She turned it off, shook her head, and went upstairs. That night, the dream felt different. The man wasn't just near her. He touched her hand. His fingers brushed against hers gently, with kindness and something more. Claire looked at him, and for the first time, she felt her heart ache with something she hadn't felt in a long time. Longing. She didn't even know him, but she wanted to. There was something familiar in the way he looked at her, like they had known each other before. "Tell me your name," she whispered. His lips moved. He said something, but again, the sound never reached her. Instead, the wind picked up and the walls creaked, and the dream dissolved into silence. When she woke up the next morning, her heart was racing. She looked down at her hand, the one he had touched. It felt warm. Claire stood in her bedroom, holding her hand like it still carried his warmth. The dream had felt too real. His touch, his eyes, the way he looked at her like She was someone he had waited for. It all stayed with her after she woke up. It wasn't just a dream anymore. She knew it. Something was happening. Something she couldn't explain. The days passed slowly, but each one felt heavier than the last. Claire started to feel different. It began with small things. She slept longer than usual, sometimes waking up after 10 hours still feeling tired. She felt dizzy in the mornings and had no interest in coffee, which had always been her daily routine. Then came the hunger. But not just any hunger, strange cravings. One afternoon, she stood in her kitchen eating pickles straight from the jar, only to follow it with 2 spoonfuls of peanut butter. She laughed to herself. What is wrong with me? At first, she blamed stress. Moving into a new house, adjusting to small-town life, and those dreams, anyone would feel a little off. But when her period didn't come, Claire froze. She waited a day, then another. By the 5th day, her stomach turned with worry. She hadn't been with anyone, not in months, not since her breakup back in LA. Her chest felt tight. Her hands shook slightly as she searched her purse for her phone. She looked up the nearest clinic and called for an appointment. 2 days later, the clinic was clean and quiet. A soft scent of flowers filled the air, and the walls were painted pale blue. Claire sat in the waiting room, heart racing, her hands folded in her lap. A few women sat nearby reading magazines. Claire stared at the floor. When the nurse called her in, everything moved quickly. Polite questions, a simple test, and then silence as they waited. Finally, the nurse came back with a soft smile and a paper in her hand. Miss Matthews, she said gently, the test is positive. You're about 6 weeks pregnant. Claire blinked. Her mouth opened, but no words came. That can't be, she whispered. I haven't been with anyone. The nurse nodded kindly, used to surprised reactions. Sometimes it happens when we least expect it. Maybe someone from a while ago. Claire shook her head slowly. No. No one. The nurse offered a small smile. Well, you can take some time to process it. If you have any questions, we're here to help. That night, Claire sat on the edge of her bed, both hands over her stomach. Her mind raced with questions, but deep inside, she already knew the answer. A part of her had known it from the moment she woke up that morning with warmth in her hand. The dreams. The man. It had started around 6 weeks ago. The timing matched. But how could something like this be real? She stood slowly and walked to the window. The wind was soft that night, brushing through the trees. The house behind her was quiet, but she didn't feel alone. She turned toward the bed. Is it you? She whispered. Is this even possible? She waited. Nothing happened. No voice. No shape. Just the creaking of the old floorboards as the house settled. Claire felt her chest grow tight with emotion, confusion, fear, wonder, and something even stronger. Connection. Whatever this was, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't random. She walked down to the living room. The record player was on again. She hadn't touched it. The same jazz song played, soft, slow, full of longing. Claire sat on the couch, wrapped a blanket around her, and listened. Her eyes filled with tears, but not from sadness. She felt seen. She felt chosen. I don't know who you are, she whispered, voice trembling. But I know this child is real. And I think you're the father. The lights dimmed just slightly. Claire blinked, unsure if it was her imagination, but she smiled anyway. She wasn't alone. Not really. And inside her, life was growing. Claire couldn't sleep that night. She lay awake on the couch, listening to the soft jazz drifting from the record player. Her thoughts were spinning, her emotions heavy but not painful, more like a weight she didn't know how to carry yet. There was life inside her. That was real. The test didn't lie. The feelings in her body didn't lie either. And yet she hadn't been with anyone. Not while awake. The dreams of the man felt more real than anything else in her life lately. She remembered the shape of his hands, the soundless movement of his lips, the way his eyes saw straight through her like he knew every secret she carried. The same song on the record player had played every night since the dreams began. She didn't know its name, but the melody felt familiar now, warm, almost protective. Something was calling her. The next morning, Claire went into town. The air was cool, and the streets were quiet. She walked to the Rosewood Public Library, an old red brick building with ivy growing along the sides. Inside, it smelled like paper and wood polish. She found the local history section and started digging through newspaper archives. She searched for anything about Chestnut Hill. The house had stood for more than 100 years. She already knew that from a plaque near the porch. But she needed more. Finally, in an old yellowed binder marked 1978, Town Records, she found a story. A black and white newspaper clipping caught her eye. The headline read, "House Fire on Chestnut Hill. Man presumed dead." Her heart skipped. She leaned closer. The article said a man named Daniel Hargrove, age 27, had lived in the house alone. On the night of July 8th, there had been a fire. The upstairs had burned badly. Firefighters arrived too late to save it. But no body was ever found. They searched the entire property. No one could say for sure if Daniel had died or disappeared. Some said he ran away. Others believed he'd been trapped in the fire. No one ever saw him again. Claire whispered the name out loud. Daniel. The name sounded right, familiar, like something spoken in a dream. She copied the article and tucked it into her bag. Her hands shook slightly as she left the library. Everything inside her told her it was him. That night, Claire stood at the bottom of the attic stairs. The house was quiet, but her heart beat like a drum. She held a flashlight and a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The attic door creaked as she pulled it open. The smell of dust and old wood filled her nose as she climbed up slowly. The attic was mostly empty. A few broken chairs, a dusty mirror, and some boxes sat in the corners. Moonlight came in through a small round window at the end of the room. Something called her to the far side. She stepped carefully across the old wooden floor, stopping when she felt something different beneath her feet. A hollow sound. She knelt and brushed away the dust. One of the floorboards was loose. Her fingers pulled at the edges, and with a quiet pop, it lifted up. Beneath it, wrapped in an old piece of cloth, was a small journal. The cover was scorched at the edges, as if it had survived a fire. She held it gently, afraid it might fall apart. She opened the first page. July 3rd, 1978. I keep seeing her in my dreams. A woman I don't know. She's always looking out the window, like she's waiting for something. I think she's real. I think we're meant to meet. Claire covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes filled with tears. She flipped through more pages. Sometimes I hear music. It comes before the dreams. The same jazz song. It plays in my head when I see her. Last night, I saw her smile. I reached for her hand. She felt real. I don't think I'm dreaming anymore. Claire pressed the book to her chest. Her breath was shaky. It was him. It had to be. Daniel had seen her, just like she had seen him. Somehow, across time, across life and death, their souls had reached for each other. Claire stayed in the attic for a long time, curled up on the floor, reading every page. The journal ended a few days before the fire. The last entry was short. I think the house is holding something. A doorway. If anything happens to me, I hope she finds this. I hope she knows I loved her even before we met. Her tears finally came, not out of fear, but something deeper. A kind of quiet heartbreak, mixed with wonder. Daniel was gone, but he wasn't lost. She wiped her face and stood, one hand resting on her stomach. Our child is proof, she whispered. You found me. As she climbed down from the attic, the house creaked softly, not in a scary way. It felt more like a sigh, like it was listening. That night, she placed the journal on her nightstand beside the photo of her parents. She looked at the ceiling, then the window, then the empty space beside her on the bed. Come back, she whispered. Please. I believe now. And just before she fell asleep, the record player started playing on its own. The same jazz song. The soft sound of jazz filled the bedroom again. Claire opened her eyes slowly. She hadn't touched the record player. She hadn't even gotten out of bed. But the song was playing, just like always, gentle and familiar, like a lullaby from another time. She sat up. The room was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. "Daniel," she whispered. The curtains moved slightly, though the windows were closed. Her heart began to race, not with fear, but with hope. And then she saw him. Standing in the corner of the room, just where the moonlight hit the floor, Daniel appeared. Not like before, not a shadow, not a blur in a dream, but clear and whole. He looked just like he had in her dreams. His eyes were kind, his posture relaxed. He looked at her the way someone looks at the most important part of their life. Claire didn't move. She was afraid if she blinked, he might disappear. But he didn't. He smiled. "You found the journal," he said, his voice soft and warm. "I hoped you would." Claire's eyes filled with tears. She stood slowly, her hand resting on her round stomach. "I found everything," she whispered. "And I believe you now. I believe this is real." Daniel stepped closer. The floor didn't creak under him. His movements were smooth, almost like he was floating but still grounded somehow. Claire reached out her hand. He reached for hers. When their fingers touched, it felt warm, solid, real. "I'm not supposed to stay long," he said gently. "But I had to see you. One last time." Claire blinked through tears. "You came back to me." "I never left," he said. "I was always here. You just couldn't see me." She looked down at her stomach. "The baby, is it really yours?" Daniel nodded. "She's part of both of us. Something the world didn't expect. A gift. A bridge between the living and what's beyond." Claire smiled, even as a tear slipped down her cheek. "I'm scared." He stepped closer, placing his hand over hers on her belly. "You're stronger than you know," he said. "And you're not alone. This house, it's part of our story. And so is she." Claire looked up at him. "Will she know you?" Daniel's smile turned gentle, a little sad. "She'll feel me. When the music plays. When the wind moves the curtains. When she laughs for no reason. I'll be there, in the spaces you can't always see." He leaned in and pressed a kiss to her forehead. His lips were warm. "Real." "I love you," he said. "I love you too," she whispered, holding him for one long, still moment. And then he faded, slowly, like mist in morning light. 2 weeks later, Claire gave birth to a baby girl on a quiet Sunday morning. The sun was shining, and the windows in her bedroom were open. The curtains danced in the breeze, and the house felt full, not just of light, but of something more. She named her daughter Lila Hope Hargrove. Lila had gray eyes, soft and deep, just like Daniel's. Her smile came early. Her laugh sounded like music. From the moment she was born, Claire noticed strange little things. Lila would stare at empty corners of the room, smiling and cooing like someone was there. She always calmed down when the record played, especially that same jazz song. And sometimes, when the wind blew just right, Claire could swear she heard footsteps upstairs, soft and familiar. But she wasn't afraid. Claire stayed in the house. She never moved away. She raised Lila there, surrounded by the warmth of quiet things and invisible love. She kept Daniel's journal on the shelf beside the baby books. Some nights, when Lila cried, Claire would rock her slowly and hum along to the old jazz record. And the crying would stop, as if someone else was there, helping her hold the child. When Lila was old enough to speak, she once pointed to the hallway and said, "Mama, there's a man smiling at me." Claire smiled back and said, "Yes, sweetie, that's Daddy." The wind blew gently through the window, and the record started spinning on its own. The house had been full of silence when she arrived, but now it was full of life. And yet, somewhere beyond the veil, something else began to stir. But that was only the beginning. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, kindly subscribe to channel, like, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. You can also comment what you feel about the story. Thanks for watching.